You're listening to the Teach Better Talk podcast featuring expert educators eager to share progressive tactics to reach more students. Teach Better Talk is created by teachers and fueled by passion. Let's get started.
Episode 194 of Teach Better Talk. My name is Ray Hewart, and as always, I am with my very deserving friend, Jeff Gargis. How are you, Jeff?
I'm great. What am I deserving of?
I don't know. I think you're like a relatively decent human being. You deserve good things.
Okay, I can appreciate that. Was that by chance a tip of the hat to your new book that's coming out, or that's out as of this podcast?
Yeah, come on, let's be honest, Jeff.
Because if it's not, it should be.
Thursday, and this is officially book launch day. If you're listening to this, by the way, when this podcast came out, guys, it's book launch day. Big deal.
I know.
Can I say it's a
So
big deal? Is
you
that
wrote
dumb?
another
Should I
book.
not?
No, it's a huge deal. You wrote another book, and you wrote it with Adam Welcome.
I did.
How cool was that? What was that like?
It was surreal, to be completely honest. I don't like to talk about him, like, because it like makes me sound like a loser when I'm like, Adam's so cool. But truly, guys, like, if you would have told me like 5 years ago or however long it was when I read Kids Deserve It, and I was, learning about this great educator sharing his insights through the number of different books that Adam's written, that now would be writing one with him, I wouldn't have believed you for a second. So this was a great experience, not only to kind of have that bucket list moment, but also because I really like what we put together. I know that sounds dorky, but we just published Teachers Deserve It. And this is a powerful book. And I feel confident saying that because it was a project we worked on for so long that I'm so thrilled to finally have, it out for people to grab.
So give us the sort of overview. Like, what's the book about? What does it cover? What's the purpose behind it?
Yeah, so when Teachers Deserve It originally was, brought to my attention, Adam and I were talking about this book for a while because I felt like Teachers Deserve It was going to turn into a complaining book. And to be honest, we had this title, but wasn't sure what it was going to turn into yet. And what we thought it was and what it ended up turning into was so different because it was such a process diving into what do teachers deserve. And I didn't just want to make an entire book of a list, right? Teachers deserve this and they deserve this and they deserve this. But it's more than that. It's more along the lines of, yeah, you know what? We wish teachers had this stuff. We wish teachers had the respect they deserve. We wish teachers had smaller class sizes and higher pay and strong leaders, and we wish all these things were the social norm in our field. But the reality is that if they're not, the only thing we can do is now take action to control that narrative and make a change. And that's what the book turned into. It's not a book about complaining where we list off a ton of stuff that you deserve, because the reality is you do deserve it. But now it's our responsibility to take small action steps that are seemingly minor day to day and really start sharing with the world our story of being an educator so that we can stop saying we deserve these things and actually have them.
I love it. I love the purpose of the book. I'm excited about the book. I've read the book. It's good. It is powerful. It highlights 22 other educators as well, which is awesome. How many chapters is it? Do you know the chapters and page count?
It's 13 chapters,
13
but
chapters.
there's like an introduction and a conclusion chapter. So there's 11 official chapters. I will say, Jeff, though, Adam and I wrote like 44 chapters, to be honest with you. And then when we submitted it to our publisher, we got to kind of combine sections. Like there were chapters that had similarities. So we put them into these 11 chapters, but we're able to share all the ideas originally saying. So I think total there's like somewhere around 40 proclamations of what teachers deserve. And I think that kind of adds a fun element because as you're reading, there's all these different really hard topics that come up, challenging ideas, with also some goofy ones about what teachers deserve that we're able to dive into in a lot of different lenses, which I think is super powerful.
Yeah, that's really powerful. So that's
And
out now. What and what?
I just want to give a shout out. Like, we highlighted 22 educators. I know you said that earlier. Shout out to those educators. We were able to share these why stories of education from 22 separate educators, whether they're classroom teachers, counselors, principals, everybody in between, making up the entire ecosystem. This book isn't just for teachers, it's for educators, anybody. It's for parents. Let's be honest, it's for anybody who wants to learn. And I'm just so excited. So I don't know how to. I'm like overjoyed that people hopefully will enjoy the book, but more so get to hear about the voices of the teachers across our country. There's some amazing people, and I love them. It's so fun.
I love it. So that's out right now. Amazon, Barnes and Noble, wherever you get your books, go grab it. Make sure you're following Ray, following Adam, tweeting out, letting everyone know. Hashtag teachers deserve it so we can see it. I know there's stickers all over the place. I've been seeing those for a while now. So excited to see all the pictures of the book coming in, of people getting it in their hands and stuff. So congrats again. Super proud of you and excited for you, by the
And I
way.
will say that if you order the book on Amazon, and it takes a few days to ship, right? You're not going to get it like in that moment instantaneously. We haven't yet gotten there with our technology. So there is a free book study actually that you can go check out about the book that Adam and I have been pushing out like crazy on our social medias. So if you want to kind of get a feel for the book, we share three modules on three separate chapters. So even if you haven't gotten the book yet, you can actually still start talking through the content, which is a fun little feature. So keep your eyes out for that.
So look at that. You can order the book. You don't have to wait at this point. You can already get some of it while you're waiting. So that's awesome. Really cool. Really exciting. So let's talk about this episode. We got Sara LaHayne, who is the founder and the CEO of Move This World. And this is Move This World is a pretty big organization. They're leading a social emotional learning program. So they work with teachers, schools, districts, communities, parents, students, and it's just in all different realms of the socio emotional world and helping them build these pieces and these foundational pieces into their daily lives. Sarah was also named. We didn't even talk about this in the episode, Ray, but did you know she was named Female and Innovator of the Year in 2016 by Stevie Awards? She presents all over the place. She's been featured in USA Today, Forbes, Washington Post, The Guardian, and more. She's got a lot of stuff. I was going to go into more that I have in my notes here, but she actually talks about some of her background. I'm going to let her share that because I think it's really cool. This was a great episode. Just a lot of little nuggets, a lot of little one-liners, a lot of little things that you can take and put into your daily life, your daily mind to just be a little more connected, taking care of yourself, focusing on the social emotional aspects of not just in the classroom but also just in your everyday life. Um, Ray, anything you want our listeners to focus on specifically in this episode?
No, I love Sarah's insight. She shares so much in the here that this is one that I do recommend. You probably want to like pause, rewind, and listen to twice, but definitely connect with her. I mean, she's on all the social media sites, so make sure that you go connect with not only her but also the organization because there's so much good stuff going on there.
All right, with that, let's get into episode 194 with Sara LaHayne.
We'll be getting right back to this podcast episode, but really quick, I want to give a special shout out to any leaders in schools. If you are a district leader, a school building leader in any capacity, the Teach Better team has a weekly administrative mastermind, which actually welcomes in district leaders from around the world to come together and collaborate. There is no better time than right now to make sure that you are considering all factors and sharing resources with educators around the country and around the world. This is an amazing get-together that happens every single Tuesday at 2 o'clock Central, 3 o'clock Eastern. And if you have any sort of leadership role, consider this your invitation. You can get the private link to make sure that you're part of this weekly get-together over at teachbetter.com/mastermind. All right, leaders, we'll see you there, but let's get back to this episode.
All right, we are here and we are chatting with Sara LaHayne. And Sara, it's awesome having you on the show. We've been talking for a little bit before hitting record. Super excited to just kind of dive into your story, learn more about you and everything you have going on. Before we get too far into things, though, how are you feeling right now?
Thank you for asking. I appreciate that. I think that now more than ever, we really have to take the opportunity to check in with one another and ask in a meaningful way because we used to just say, hey, how are you? And we would get
Hmm.
good or fine. But, things are changing minute by minute and day by day. So I appreciate you asking. Right now, I'm feeling okay. Earlier today, I was feeling great, but yes, right now I'm feeling okay.
Well, Sarah, we are really happy that you're here, and we're hoping that you feel like fabulous by the end of this podcast.
I was going to say,
Because
I think I'm going to feel better, as this
yeah,
conversation
I
progresses.
know there's a lot going on in the world. I'm sure a lot going on in your own life. I mean, this is just the ever changing world we're living in now, our new normal. But I have to say, hopefully, after we get into some fun stuff, you're going to just be completely rejuvenated and get your second wind. Before we get into too much of the fun, I do want to have you kind of introduce yourself and answer that kind of traditional question of what do you do? Because I'm confident you do a lot. And so I'm not sure quite how you're going to fit it all into one question, but good luck here, Sarah.
So I am the founder and CEO of Move This World, and Move This World strengthens the mental, emotional, and social well-being of pre-K through 12th grade students, teachers, and families by building in daily practice of identifying, expressing, and managing emotions. So much like our feelings, as you asked just now, change moment to moment and day by day, we create these moments of authentic connection to ourselves and to those around us so that we have coping strategies to navigate challenges and stressors, set goals, and support one another to succeed and thrive in school and work and life. Move This World is actually my second baby, or I guess I have three young daughters who are part of my Move This World as part of my children. And I really strive to cultivate the same sense of play and purpose and connection that we do in Move This World with my daughters. And I feel so grateful to have the opportunity to live out my personal values of authentic connection and creative expression and wellness and empathy that I work so hard to cultivate in my own home and Move This World for hundreds of thousands of students every single day across 35 states.
All right, so let's talk a little bit more about Move This World. I want to know, can you share with us sort of the story of it? Like, how long has it been around? When did you start it? How did you start it? What led to that? Kind of give us the backstory on that. Would you mind?
So, personally, I have a background as a dancer and an artist. I grew up in a creative home. My mom was a dancer, she's still a dancer. My dad is a songwriter, he plays the guitar and the piano. So, I grew up in a home where creative expression was how we interacted with one another. It was how we celebrated one another, even to this day, for weddings and anniversaries and birthdays. My dad will write a song, and my sister and my dad and I will sing it, and we are the Potler family trio. So I always felt this internal struggle between a career in the arts and musical theater and dance and education and having a social impact. My mom is an occupational therapist and works in schools, and I was always so inspired by her work. And so I was doing a Fulbright scholarship in Bogota, Colombia in 2007, and working with this incredible Fulbright supervisor, a Colombian man who did his EDD at Harvard studying nonviolence and bullying prevention, but saw the way his research team was going about this work. And teachers were standing behind desks and lecturing about self and social awareness and emotional identification and management. And as you may imagine, students were pretty disengaged. The concepts were just glossing right over. They were slouched in their chairs, they were looking at the clock. But at the same time, they were dancing to reggaeton music in the schoolyard in this fun, inclusive, participatory environment. And that's when I thought, how can we use this vehicle of movement and expression and creativity, one that's so personal to me as a dancer and an artist, to cultivate these same evidence based social, emotional, and civic skills? And so that's when I authored the first iteration of the Move This World curriculum, looking at techniques from expressive arts therapy, positive psychology, contemplation, mindfulness, and social emotional learning. And fast forward 13 years later, the curriculum and program has evolved based on evolving research in the field, teacher and student feedback, and thinking about how this can best sustain and live in classrooms.
Mm, that's awesome. Thanks. I appreciate you sharing that. The work you're doing is phenomenal and so important. Even more so during this time. Um, I'm really interested in this one now. So one of the things we talk about in this on this podcast all the time is failure and overcoming failure, and it's one of the things that I always say that I'm fortunate to have failed a lot because I've learned from all of it. Can you share a story with us about a time that you've had a failure? Kind of take us there with you. What happened? How did you overcome that? And then what did you take away from that experience?
Mhm. Well, first, I would say I fail every day doing this work. I also fail every day as a mother and as a partner. So I would say it's very much intertwined into how I move through my day, is making mistakes and then showing up for them and authentically owning them and acknowledging them so that I can learn from them as I move forward. But the one that stands out the most to me was pretty catalytic in our evolution as an organization. And it was after about 9, 10 years of building Move This World and building Move This World, like any startup founder can relate to, sleepless nights and closing my eyes and seeing spreadsheets of cash flow and giving myself hives because I was so stressed or worried. Um, I got to this place where I really resented Move This World, even though this was something that I had birthed, that I had created, that I had brought into the world, and I loved before I had my own children. I was resenting this organization for, in many ways, stifling my creativity. I mentioned being an artist and that being my background as a dancer and in creating this curriculum, but I was feeling like my role at Move This World wasn't creative at all. I was entirely focused on um, managing the finances, the cash, the fundraising, managing people. And I felt like for me to best serve Move This World, I needed to constantly be raising capital. I would feel guilty when I was in classrooms because I felt like I should be doing something else, but I wanted to be in classrooms because that's why I started Move This World, so that I could have the impact that I want to have in the communities where we're working. And so it just really got to a point where I was so stifled and so exhausted. And a good friend and accountability partner said to me, Sarah, you're just creatively burnt out. You're not bringing your best self to this work. You really need to reset. So he turned me on to some new creative practices, one being morning pages. And so it's essentially this idea that every morning you take the time to free write 3 pages, and you don't have to have a prompt or writing about any particular purpose. You're just excavating all of the thoughts and ideas in your mind. You could write about the fact that you're tired or you're hungry or you're excited about the day ahead. And that practice, coupled with taking 6 weeks to step away from Move This World, step away from the organization I was leading, and go inward. And I lived in a Buddhist monastery and spent 12 days of silence on a silent retreat. I spent 6 weeks completely unplugged, no cell phone, no text messaging, no email, no social media, and just really going inward and finding stillness because my life had been so filled up with noise and email and notifications that I didn't have space for processing or reflection or new generative work. And by taking the time to step away, I was able to fill myself back up and move forward in ways that I could integrate creativity and pause and silence in a day-to-day life where stepping away for 6 weeks isn't possible. So my biggest failure was just burning out to the point where I didn't love the thing that I had created and had to figure out how to reinvent myself and our work in a way that I would be able to sustain and keep doing it.
Gosh, I feel like that's so important to really dive into, not only for ourselves, but in the current state, but just in the past as we continue to be in education, is that time of burnout. There were so many years that people would talk about burnout, and then I'm like, well, I've never had that. And yet then you talk about a few years later, it seems like every educator hits their tough time when you need to find balance. And I think more than ever, teachers are either experiencing that for the first time or they're experiencing it again. And so I love that you shared that story, because it should give us that moment of reminding ourselves that we have to find that balance to make sure that we're giving our best to why we're in education in the first place. So I love that you touched on that, Sarah. That's so important.
And what I would actually say, thank you, but what I would actually say that I've had to struggle with um, in the 13 years of building this and now being a mom of two is that I don't think I'm ever in balance. I don't know if I ever fully feel an equilibrium between all of these pieces of myself. But what I'm trying to do, and again, fail every day at doing it, is integrate all of these different components of self and work and community and family so that they support one another. And so there may be moments where I feel like the family pod, so to speak, is turned up. And there are other moments where I feel like my work pod is turned up. That it's not necessarily equally distributed always, but keeping that consciousness as a way to think about how I can dial up and dial back different areas of myself and our community and our family and our work based on what's happening in the world and what's happening for me.
No, I think that's so important. I'm so glad you added that, because you're right. It is kind of like, I don't know the analogy, but it's like a stereo, right? You turn certain things up and then you turn them down and other things go up. And I love that you shared that it's finding that groove, right? It's musical. I like that you said you were a dancer. I think that all kind of goes together real well. In terms of what the work you're doing, I mean, obviously there's so much that is exciting, right? So many things I'm sure that fuel your fire. But if you had to kind of pick what right now is keeping you excited and, really about not only the work you're doing, but education as a whole, what would that be?
So I think just I'm being so transparent, even at the top of this conversation, when I said I'm just doing okay in this moment, and now I'm feeling better because it's so wonderful to be speaking with you all. But part of why I just had been feeling okay is I think there is a lot that's really sad and scary about the world right now, and we need to own that and not shy away from it. And with that comes tremendous opportunity, and that's the part that I am really excited about is what challenges we can look at in order to reimagine education, community services, because there is a lot that's sad when I think about all of the children who depend on school to receive basic needs in their lives, whether that's food or mental health or just a loving adult presence that they see with regularity. So that makes me really sad and worried. But I'm so inspired by the creativity and resilience that we've seen in teachers, in in my team, in reimagining ways of working so that we can solve problems that we've seen for years, but are now at a crossroads where we have to take action. So, for example, there's been such an increase in conversation around social emotional learning and mental health. And we've been doing this work for 13 years. And when I first started, I felt like I was waving my hands in the sky and pushing this boulder up a mountain, trying to convince people to pay attention to social emotional learning. We're aggregating all of the academic studies in the field. I remember our first literature review, and that suggested that an increase in empathy led to a decrease in community level conflict. And the reason we had to create a literature review was because we kept having conversations. And again, this was 13 years ago, with leaders who would say, okay, I don't understand the connection, or my kids need this work, but my teachers are fine. They're okay. It's not about them, it's about the kids. And I will never forget a district leader who said, Sarah, what are we going to do about chronic absenteeism and chronic suspensions? And I just looked at him and I said, why do you think these kids aren't coming to school? They're not coming to school because these buildings aren't welcoming. They're not safe and supportive learning environments. They feel like jail cells. No one greets you when you come in. They're not environments where I feel warm and supported. So that is no longer a conversation where we're having to justify or advocate for the need of social emotional learning. We're now at a place where if you're not doing something to address the social emotional needs and mental health of your staff or students, you are a minority. So I hope that we can continue to build momentum in this space, to advocate for mental health supports for all students, to recognize the resiliency and creativity that teachers are bringing to to work in new ways and support them as whole selves, as whole professionals in navigating this uncertainty, and make this a part of our ongoing conversation.
Yes. Oh my gosh, Sarah, you're so spot on. So I have to know, it goes in perfectly with the next question I was going to ask you. How do we do that? Right. So, like, if you had to give one piece of advice, and granted, I know one piece of advice is, I'm sure you're full of hundreds of them, but if you had to like choose one and it was going to, we say a new teacher, but it could be any teacher, right? Any teacher in the field, what piece of advice do they need to make sure that they're doing as much in this field as possible?
Well, teachers give so much of themselves to their students. And we do that because we care deeply and we love our students. But we have to put on our own oxygen mask before we take care of someone else. So this is really difficult, exhausting work. And in order to sustain, we have to ask ourselves, what do we need to do? I don't want anyone to be in the situation that I was in when I said, I can't lead my organization anymore. I have to walk away. My one friend, accountability partner, says, I escaped. It's really important that we don't do that, that we can sustain and take care of ourselves. And so, what does that look like in your day to day life? How can you stay socially and emotionally well and prioritize that in your daily life so that you don't have to have these chunks of time, whether that's a 12-day silent retreat is impossible, but building in moments of pause. What does that look like? So I mentioned my morning pages as an important creative ritual that helps me cultivate mindfulness. In the evening, I have a meditation practice before I go to sleep. I also need movement every day, exercise, whether that's a run, a dance class, right now, virtual online dance class, making sure that I have dinner disconnected and am present for my family. So, what are the things that you will do every day to help you connect to yourself so that you can function at the highest level possible and show up in the fullest way for your students? What can you do every day that only you can do? And what are other things that can potentially wait till later, or that you can ask for help or support on, so that you're not trying to go at the highest level all of the time, but can rather function in the most effective way that you are feeling full and satisfied, because when you are, your students will see that. So if you can model social emotional skills for yourself, your kids will learn by seeing that you are practicing what you preach. And then the other important thing is just to remember that relationships are so critical right now, especially if you are in an environment where you're teaching remote or hybrid and you're not seeing your students' faces with the same regularity. We take for granted the opportunity to just pull someone aside and ask how they're feeling, or ask about their weekend, or how their morning was, or what they're going to do after school. And so, what does that look like in this new world? How can we build in these micro moments of connection to one another, of checking in? Because if I hear that a student is anxious or sad or worried a couple days in a row, I can then connect them to mental health professional or mental health support, or I can figure out how I can support them myself. So making sure that relationships continue to be the heartbeat when there is so much pressure and there is so much unknown and we're getting pulled in so many competing directions, to just be compassionate with yourself and recognize that at the end of the day, right now, kids just need to know that someone is checking in on them, and you need to be checking in with your peers and colleagues.
I love that. So much good advice right there. I love your specific mention a couple times now about morning pages. That's something that I've put in my daily routine about I don't know, a month and a half, 2 months ago, and it's just incredible. Such a simple thing that really really helps clear your mind and get you ready in the morning. So, really appreciate all that advice. It's great stuff. Let's have a little fun with these next six. We're gonna do the next six questions, and your goal is to answer each one in 15 seconds or less. You ready to go?
Okay.
All right, give us one tech tool you cannot live without.
I mean, can I say move this world? I'm not in the classroom every day, so it's hard for me to answer this one. But I hear our partners identify the importance of connecting to themselves and their students, building authentic social relationships and a sense of purpose and belonging in a way that is easy to implement and accessible. And that's certainly this work.
I will totally let that count. Let's give us a book you're reading right now.
I'm reading two. I'm reading How to Be an Anti-Racist and White Fragility.
Who do we need to follow on social media today?
So one is Britt Hawthorne, and she focuses her content on anti-racist education and anti-racist parenting. And this is ongoing work for me and my team, and I know teachers and parents are looking for reliable content right now on this work. The other is Addison Duane, and she's a PhD student studying trauma-informed schools, and I think that's really important as we return to school this fall, thinking about the trauma that we've experienced as a collective and how to move through that. And then the third is Vera, kindergarten teacher, diverse reads is her tag, and she shares amazing book recommendations for children's literature that highlight diversity, and that's a great place to access new tools and resources.
What's a good YouTube channel or website for educators?
Well, Move This World's Vimeo page and YouTube page has special programming for families, also showcases focused on diversity and inclusion. We also released a new fun animated video to help families connect to one another while sheltering in place in quarantine as we move through COVID.
Give us a daily, weekly, or monthly routine every teacher should get into.
Well, I mentioned the daily routine of morning pages, and I'm just a huge fan. I think that's such a powerful opportunity to connect to yourself in a creative format and to push yourself when you're feeling stale or stagnant and you need to kind of flex that creative muscle. When you can't write anymore, keep writing. Weekly, I would say do something that fills you up with joy and creativity and make a commitment and try to make it happen, even if the scheduling is tough. So for me, that's my weekly dance class. Right now, it's happening online, but that's my sacred time that I'm not a mom. I'm not a professional. I'm just Sarah dancing and expressing myself and connecting to myself. And then the third would be to disconnect whenever possible and do it in a way that's intentional. Put your phone on, do not disturb. Friday evening in Judaism, we have a ritual of Shabbat where we disconnect with our technology and really plug into our family and those who are around us or our friends, our community, and reflect on the week and look to the weekend ahead and try to find intentional moments where you can disconnect because otherwise it's hard to, again, bring your best self into the world.
Yeah, what is the best piece of advice you've ever received?
When I had my first daughter, a mentor who is the leading child development psychologist or one of the leading child development psychologists, she gave me some parenting advice. And she said, "You know what, Sarah, you're not going to mess this up. Too bad. Kids are built to last." And this is a really scary time. And I keep going back to how worried I am about children right now. But we have to remember that as parents and as educators, we put so much pressure on ourselves because we love our kids and we want the best for them. But during tough times, remember, kids will get through this. And as we explain the virus to our kids, as we explain wearing masks and taking temperatures and what it means to be safe and what it means to care for one another, we have to remember that kids are resilient. And if we listen to them and we check in with them and we ask them questions and we show that we care, they will be okay if we give them opportunities to express themselves.
I couldn't agree more. I love all these different pieces that you've shared, Sarah. I feel like this is an episode that I'm gonna have to go back and re-listen to because you had so many different nuggets and pieces and tips that I feel like I could go and think through and put in my like daily life right now. And I really appreciate when we get episodes like that. Would you mind kind of sharing with our group, with our network, how they can stay connected? Because you shared a lot about what you're doing, a lot about what Move This World is doing. And I hope that all of our listeners choose to go connect with these resources.
Yes. So on Twitter, you can follow me at Sara_LaHayne and at move_this world. Same thing on Instagram at Sara LaHayne and at move_this world. My website is sarahpotlerlahane.com. And on movethisworld.com, you can find a COVID-19 resource center with a number of free mental health exercises, videos, resources, conversation starters that you can use in the classroom, non corona conversation starters, ways to ignite connection with those around you. So definitely check out that as well as the videos on our YouTube and Vimeo page to think of ways that you can strengthen your own practice in social emotional wellness and that of the children in your life.
And you can find all the links and all the resources and everything we talked about in this episode over at teachbetter.com in the show notes, as well as those really important links for connecting with Sarah and keeping the conversation going. So make sure you head over to teachbetter.com for all of that. Be sure to hit subscribe so you don't miss any upcoming episodes. And if you can give us a rating and a review, we'd really appreciate that as well. Let's keep taking this one step further. Think of just 3 of your colleagues who need to hear these amazing stories and need to connect with these amazing educators, and share this podcast with them. Sarah, this has been a fantastic episode. Ray already said there's so many little nuggets, little one-liners, little things that you can take and put in place right now. Really appreciate you coming on, sharing your story, sharing all the advice you have. The work you do is incredible. It's important, and it's appreciated. And I really just appreciate your time and hanging out with us. Thank you.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for creating space for us to have these important conversations.
Until next time, let's get out there and let's teach better.